We've lived in our neighborhood for nearly 4 years. A few houses down and across the street is a Filipino family. They're pretty nice, and whenever we see each other, we always have small talk and we know each other by name. We moved in right before I gave birth to my oldest, so they always ask for the baby and they love seeing them. We have even had meals at each other's homes before. This summer, they had an older family member, maybe 55 to 60 years old, come to visit. We noticed him right away because he would always go for long walks and lingered a lot. One evening, the mother of the family introduced him as her father. He had recently moved and would be staying with them for a while before heading north to her sister's house. He was pretty new to the US and spoke a little English, just enough to get by. He seemed nice enough, but as soon as we walked inside, I told my husband that he gave me a really weird vibe. I had never felt that way of any of the 7 other family members from the home. I've been in their home and shared meals with them. They're very sweet and welcoming. My husband also told me that he did seem a little off, but we just chalked it up to cultural differences. Fast forward about a month. My mother-in-law and my mother came to visit at the very same time. They're in the driveway with our son. I run inside because I'm pregnant and I suffer from severe morning sickness. I come back out 15 minutes later and they're having a frustrating conversation with this man. He was trying to get one of them to drive him to the store and he would use a food stamp/EBD card to buy their groceries and wanted them to give him cash. They both told him that they weren't interested, but he just kept asking and lingering. When I went outside, I called out to my husband to come out, and when he saw us, he walked away very quickly. Both of our mothers told us what had happened and how forceful that he was being with them. The next few days that I see him walking, we always wave and say simple pleasantries, but every time I would wave, he would take it as a sign to come over and try to have a conversation. I began to let him know that what he did with our mothers is very illegal and to be so forceful was really unnecessary. He said that he understood, but he would linger. It would always be at a moment where I was trying to strap my toddler to his car seat and I was rushing to get him to school. It would always take me about 10 minutes to get him to get the hint that I couldn't talk, and he would slowly walk away and just linger in our driveway. It eventually got to the point where I would watch to see if he had walked past our house on his morning walk before venturing outside. I really just hated the awkward conversation. He would always seem to round the corner just as I finished strapping my son in the car and I was getting in. I would wave and then jump in quickly and drive off. It just felt really off, like he was waiting for me. One of our neighbors across the street one night told me that she got a weird vibe from him as well. And again, he always lingered. She told me that he did similar things with her when they were outside as well. They were opting to hang in the backyard with the kids just to avoid it altogether. Now, I usually work from home, but one day I went into the office and I was then alerted by the Ring camera. This man was standing and looking in through our kitchen window, just peering, and I could hear our pit bull barking at him. When he saw our dog, he jumped back and I used the microphone to say, "Can I help you? What do you want?" He looked absolutely shocked and then scurried away. I called my husband and I told him to play the video. We both thought it was really creepy. Whenever we saw the family walking that evening, we decided to bring it up to his daughter. She spoke to her father and he claimed that it never happened. We then showed her the video on her phone and he said that he must have gotten lost. The daughter seemed pretty annoyed by him and the entire situation, so him being weird kinda calmed down a bit. After that I could see that his daughter was really annoyed by his behavior, and as they were walking there was a really heated conversation. She later told me that he tends to be overly friendly and he really means no harm, but she talked to him and he would leave us alone. I asked if he had some kind of mental issue or maybe Alzheimer's since he was always getting lost. She told me no, and that he had always acted like that, and that she couldn't wait until his sister was ready for him to be sent up north to her. There were a few other neighbors that had also complained to her and the homeowners association as well. Well, about 2 months later, I dropped my son off to preschool. I get home and I have to rush in because I feel really sick. Usually I leave my car door open, but something told me to lock it as soon as I got out. I did so as I was rushing inside. I would also normally leave the door unlocked if I was just going for a quick throw-up session, but again, my instincts told me to lock the bottom and top lock. When I was in the bathroom, right by the front door, throwing up my life, I then hear a rattling at the front door. Someone is turning the lock back and forth. Of course, my ring chimes and I then look at it in between heaves. What do you know? It's the old man and he's trying to get into our home. I go over to the microphone and then say, "You're at the wrong house." To which he responds with,
"Let me in, now. I want to tell you something."
Now, I kid you not, it was the best English sentence I had ever heard from someone who wasn't that good with English. I started to feel better pretty quickly and I was now on high alert. I responded with, "What do you want to tell me?" He looked right at the camera.
"Let me in your house, now!"
This is where I started to panic. He knew he was at the wrong house, but still he was continuing to try and break in. I respond, "Please get off my property. I don't feel comfortable with you here and I'm not letting you in my house." He then starts rattling at the door again really hard and tries to pull it open and then starts knocking on the bathroom window. This is where I get pissed. "Get the hell off my damn property right now. I'm not gonna let you in. If you don't get the hell out of here right now, I'm calling the cops." He then steps back, gives the camera the middle finger, and scurries off. He disappears and I run upstairs and see that he's simply walking back to his house. I let our pit bull out of our bedroom as he had been going crazy during this whole ordeal. I call my husband and he tells me to call the daughter and tell her what happened. I call her and I tell her what happened and she told me not to let him in, ever. She began to warn me that he's been very inappropriate and forceful with all of the women in her family, and she didn't want me to get hurt, especially being pregnant. She eventually comes over about an hour later and I show her the video. She's absolutely fuming over this and very apologetic, and she begs me not to call the cops. She promises me he'll be gone within the next day. The next day, he eventually flies out and his daughter told him that he's no longer welcome in her home. He now lives up north somewhere in Maryland with his other daughter and probably harassing other people as well. I honestly really don't know what would have happened if I didn't follow my instincts that day. I'm just really glad I'm okay. This story happened to me when I was in 3rd grade. I was about 8 years old at the time. My regular babysitter was ill, so my mom asked one of our neighbors who had kids and babysit a lot of the neighborhood kids if she would watch my brother and I for a few hours. We were having so much fun at Brandy's house when my mom came to pick us up. I asked if I could stay a little bit longer and finish Madagascar, as we had just started watching it. She said that it was fine, but I was to walk straight home right after. It was like maybe half a block, so not that far at all. So as the movie finishes, Brandy said that I needed to get home really fast because it was dark out. As I'm walking home, this other neighbor, Dennis, is just standing outside in his front yard. Now, I had seen Dennis around the neighborhood because his wife was very unforgettable looking. They have a daughter that was like maybe 4-ish at the time, so I didn't ever play with her or know her family outside of seeing them around the neighborhood. Dennis starts calling out to me, saying,
"Hey, what are you doing?"
"I'm just going to my parents."
"Do you want to come inside for a little bit?"
"No, that's okay. My mom told me to come straight home."
"Aw, come on. I'm sure she wouldn't mind."
No thanks."
"Come on. I have a daughter who would absolutely love to play with you. We can even make snacks."
At this point, I was just like, red flag, abort mission, and I started booking it home really fast. Then he starts following me. Not quickly, just kind of walking like Michael Myers. It was creepy. Luckily, I eventually made it home, and once he saw that I was approaching my house with my porch light on, he completely backed off. I'd like to mention that behind our houses was a giant wooded area with paths that led to a nearby lake. So, I mean, this dude could have caught me and dragged me into the woods or something. I try not to think like that, but like, what other motives could he have had, you know? Fast forward until I'm in high school and working at a restaurant in town. I see creepy Dennis and his wife all the time. As it turns out, they were secret shoppers at our restaurant. I don't think he really recognized me working there though. Anyways, I know this isn't your typical horror story of someone getting dragged into the woods, but still, as a child, this was a very creepy experience to go through. If you're a young child walking home alone, always watch your surroundings. You just never know. So, about a year ago, my apartment complex decided that they wanted to renovate my unit, so I had to move out at the end of my lease. I live in Denver and my rent is pretty ridiculous here, so I started worrying about finding something affordable in my neighborhood, which I really love. I posted on the Nextdoor app to see if anyone in my neighborhood knew of any affordable rentals in the area. I immediately got a message from someone named Joe who said that one of the condos in his complex was going to be up for rent pretty soon, and he knew the owner. He offered to get me in touch with the owner. I asked if he could send me pictures of the unit, and he asked if he could text me some pictures that his neighbor took because the chat function on the app is really slow. I now feel really stupid for doing this, but eventually gave him my phone number. I kid you not, I received a phone call from an unknown number within seconds. Now, I normally don't answer calls from unknown numbers, but I was expecting a call from a number that wasn't saved in my phone, so I answered it. I was completely bewildered when the person then said,
"Hi, it's Joe. How's your day going?"
Huh? It really took me by surprise and I didn't really know what to say. He started to just shoot the crap on the phone, talking about how he works nights and how tired he is and how he takes care of his daughter while his girlfriend works during the day. I finally interrupted and then said, "So, about the condo?" He pretty much completely disregarded that and then said,
"I really don't think that my girlfriend would appreciate me talking to you, but I don't have to tell her, right?"
I said that I have to go and then immediately hung up the phone. And as soon as I did, he then started texting me. It was really bizarre and quite alarming to me. I blocked his number and then moments later, he found me on Facebook and sent me a friend request. Now, I'm 32 years old, but it was really creepy to me, and I even called my parents to tell them about it and just how unnerved that it made me. And the worst part about it is that on Nextdoor, even if your exact address isn't listed, your complex is. So I was pretty certain that I didn't have my address visible in my profile, but I checked and sure enough, my address and unit number were totally public. Unable to really contact me in any other way, he started messaging me again on Nextdoor, asking me if I wanted to go on a walk with him. You can't really block or report people on the app, so I just decided to delete it. So one night about a month or so later, I had a knock on my door at around 10 p.m. on a weeknight. I looked out my peephole but couldn't really get a good look. I saw that it was a man who slightly had his head down. Either way, I don't answer the door for anyone that I'm not expecting, especially not a random guy at 10 o'clock at night. Feeling panicked, I decided to call my neighbor across the hall. She's an older woman and we always look out for each other since we both live alone. I asked her if it looked like he was some kind of delivery guy at the wrong door. She opened her door to try and get a good look at the guy, and that spooked him because he literally ran away. I honestly have no idea if this was the Nextdoor guy or not, but my gut tells me that it was. This was a big wake-up call. I always felt that I practiced good online safety, but I didn't even know that my address was visible on Nextdoor. I'll never be that casual or lazy about privacy settings like that ever again. I'm 28 years old, but when I was about 5 years old, my mom and I lived in this duplex that was off a main road and kind of in a wooded area. We lived on one side and the other was a woman and her son. He was studying to be a teacher. My mother had me pretty young, so she was about 25 years old and the guy was in his early 20s. He would often come and talk to my mom. My mother said that he would ask a lot of questions about me and asked my mother if it would be alright for him to take me for walks in the woods. Of course, my mother always declined. My mother worked in the operating room at the local hospital and was on call a lot, so most of the weekends I stayed at my grandma's house. One night while I was at my grandma's house, my mom was home alone, sleeping. She woke in the middle of the night and said she doesn't remember if she heard something or felt someone in the room, but she woke up. She could see feet wearing socks that were sticking out from the end of her bed. She grabbed her bedside lamp and was about to hit the intruder when our neighbor then yelled her name and then said his name. He couldn't really explain why he was naked and only wearing socks, but he begged my mother not to tell his mother about it. My mother, of course, called the cops. She ended up going to court and making a victim impact statement against this guy because she was absolutely terrified that he'd become a teacher and be around children. She says that she's pretty sure that he was there for me that night and was so happy that I wasn't there. We ended up moving pretty much immediately after that happened. She just couldn't stay another night in that house. I'm just really glad that nothing happened to me or my mother. Who really knows what would have happened if he would have succeeded in whatever he was trying to do that night. So, this happened about 4 years ago. I'm 21 years old and no longer living in the neighborhood. I saw the neighbor in question yesterday when I was visiting my parents, and that's when I remembered what had happened. A little bit of backstory. I live in a third world country. Our neighborhood is one of the worst ones, but only for outsiders. We're actually pretty friendly towards each other. Even people fresh out of jail are typically pretty friendly. We got a lot of mental cases in our neighborhood, and Happy is one of them. My mother and I call him Happy because his name literally means happy, and we always joke around saying, "Oh, Happy, are you happy?" Because he's usually always smiling. That is, unless someone angers him, which is at least 3 times a year. I lived there for about 19 years, so I know how he is. Happy lives with his 2 brothers. One sells fruits and the other is a taxi driver. Happy doesn't work because he's mentally ill. I think he has some type of schizophrenia, but I'm not really sure which one. All I know is he just doesn't really function right. You can't really hold a conversation with him on sports or the news or really anything. His sentences just never make sense. I should also say that our country doesn't really take mental illnesses very seriously. We've got like 3 psych wards in the entire country. There's just no way of treatment for him, and whatever he is, people just refer to him as crazy. It's honestly really sad. My dad was actually friends with him and his brothers. Not anymore though. My dad used to give him money from time to time so that he could buy himself smokes. My dad knew that his brother, the taxi driver, needed to support his 2 kids in another city, and the fruit seller barely sells his goods. Happy used to help carry the groceries sometimes, and Dad would give him some change for it. So since I was a kid, I only know the Happy who was very helpful and friendly, and I always smiled at him, and he would smile back at me. Well, when I turned 15 years old, he had completely changed. He still had the smile on his face, and he would stand outside in different places in the shade all day long smoking. I used to wake up at about 7 a.m. to go to school, and I would see him outside wide awake just smoking. He either didn't sleep or just woke up way too early. He would also walk some long distances as well. We would see him in a place where it takes us about half an hour to go by car, so imagine how long it took him by foot to get there. He seemed restless, but mostly he would just stand there and smoke. It ranged from early mornings to very late at nights. The behavior change became pretty creepy. He would always stare at me and have a creepy kind of forced smile on his face. If I passed by him, he would always follow me with his eyes, to the point that he would walk backwards and keep staring. I glanced a couple of times to know that he does this every time. He would also walk backwards and then put his back up against the walls like he was hiding or something. His whole demeanor just totally changed. His anger and fits also became more frequent. He would shout some cursing phrases that made no sense whatsoever and walk angrily towards his house. Now to what actually happened to me. As I said, he would always follow me with his eyes and all that. I was 17 years old, and out of any day, the day of the incident, that I happened to be home alone. I didn't go out with the family because I had to study. He probably knew that I was alone because whenever my family left, I saw through the window that he was standing in his usual spot and just staring at them while they were driving off. Lunchtime came, so I went to go buy some stuff to cook. I spotted him standing next to his brother that sells the fruit at the local market. I went to the market to buy some veggies and meat. The vegetables were pretty close to where Happy was, but the butcher was a minute walk away. As I paid the butcher for my purchase and putting it into my bag, I look up and there Happy was, just staring at me. I didn't really think much of it, so I turned to the right and just kept walking towards the house, but he was right behind me yet again. I still didn't think much of it, again, because our houses are literally right next to each other. I passed his house and I was waiting to hear his footsteps to stop, but no. He was still right behind me. I look and his eyes are still on me with that really creepy smile. Still, I didn't really care because I just thought that he was going right to his spot that he usually stands at to light a cigarette or something. I never really felt like I was in any danger in my neighborhood, so I'm not really the type to get anxious easily, and especially by Happy. I never really felt that he was the dangerous type, even during his rage fits, so that's why I really had no red flags. I entered the main door from the street and walked in the wide rectangular hall that had one door where an old woman lives, passing her door and turning right to climb the stairs to get to my house that was on the second floor. I heard someone enter the main door and in the hall. Again, I just thought it was one of the neighbors from the third floor. The footsteps were really quick though, so I thought that one of them was in a hurry, so I turned to look at the bottom of the stairs to see who it was and make some room so that they could climb fast. To my shock, it was none other than Happy on the bottom of the stairs. I stopped dead in my tracks, and that's when my heart just started pounding really fast. I said, "Happy, what are you doing here?" With no response, he started bolting right towards me, taking 2 steps at a time. I started climbing faster too, and he caught my foot and I slipped. My right arm and knee were in so much pain from the fall. He was dragging me to the bottom of the stairs, and that messed up my back as well. But with all the adrenaline pumping through my veins, I started kicking to release my ankle from his 2 hands and then screaming for him to get off. I also screamed out help, hoping one of the neighbors would hear me and come for my rescue. With my free leg, I started kicking his forearm so that he would let go, and then kept kicking and shaking the other leg free as well. With a bit of luck, I finally got free. I couldn't turn though, and I started climbing, afraid that he would follow to the house, and God only knows what he would do if he got inside. I really just wanted to kick him and hopefully make him just lose balance and fall off the stairs to give me enough time to go inside my house. I kicked and kicked, but with no luck, and screaming. It felt like forever, but it was probably about 5 seconds, and I then heard the door of the old lady downstairs begin to open. Happy heard it too, so he fled out of there. Happy passed her house, so of course she saw him, and she actually shouted at him, but he didn't listen. She was calling my name and asking if I'm okay, but I couldn't respond. She popped her head up from the bottom of the stairs, still calling my name, but all I could really do was just cry in terror and pain. My elbow was bleeding, and she started calling for my mom's name. I told her that nobody was home, so she asked me to get in her house so she could help take care of my bleeding. I told her it was okay and that I'd just do it myself, but she refused and kept calling me to go down, but eventually I just ignored her and hardly climbed those stairs and got inside. After about an hour or so, I got myself cleaned up, calmed down a bit, and cautiously went to the old lady's house. I knocked and she opened, and I asked her not to tell anything to my parents because if my dad knew, he would probably literally kill the guy. I told her that Happy was just crazy and my dad shouldn't go to jail for someone who's crazy, and he probably wasn't in his right mind. I eventually talked her into believing that he was out of his mind and that it's not that serious. She promised that she wouldn't say anything to my family, and that was that. The next 2 years, he changed again completely. This time, however, he wouldn't even look me in the eyes. If I was walking and he was walking towards me, he would literally turn around and not pass near me. The first couple of months, I was really afraid that he would be waiting around a corner or something, but turns out he just doesn't want to be seen by me. Even after me moving out and us not seeing each other whenever I visit, and to this day, 4 years later, he still doesn't want to be seen by me. So Happy, I hope you stay that way and don't hurt any other girls from the neighborhood. But what I really hope for the most is mental illness awareness in my country. I really hope that people start getting treatments and the right care. People like Happy really need it. I used to live in an apartment complex on the first floor. I had one person right next door named Joe, and 2 more neighbors that were adjacent. I had met my next door neighbor when he had knocked on my door as the sun was setting. He was plump, brown hair with a bowl cut, glasses, and a button-down shirt. He had told me that he had been knocking on doors and asking if someone could babysit his dog for the weekend, since he was allegedly being called away for a last-minute work trip. I agreed to watch his dog, and only thinking of possible problems that might arise with his dog, I asked for his number, simply stating, just in case. That was a major mistake on my part. I didn't really realize it then, obviously. I was really just trying to be a good neighbor. We had a short conversation about my love for video games and playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it seemed like we had a lot of mutual interests. I was just being friendly, nothing more. I had my wedding ring on and made sure to brush my hand across my face to make sure that he could see it. My husband was deployed at the time. I didn't really think anything of it. Joe came back on Monday morning and I handed him his key. I hadn't asked for any money, but he offered to pay me back in another way. Apparently his office was having an escape the room event and he was allowed to bring a friend. I agreed because, why not? He seemed like a really cool person that could potentially become a new friend for me. When the day came, I wasn't really feeling very well. I was cuddling on the couch wrapped up in blankets with my sweet little cockapoo named Cortana. I was really sick and hadn't been able to make it into work that day, so I sent Joe a text letting him know that I wouldn't be able to make it to the event and to not worry about paying me back. Joe's response?
Okay.
I didn't respond. I fell asleep. I started getting text messages from him over the next several weeks, but the context didn't really add up until the very end. He had texted me asking me why I hadn't invited him to play Dungeons and Dragons. How did he know that I was currently playing? My only explanation was that he must have heard me talking about it out in the hallway as I was leaving with my friend. Things started to get a little strange from here on out. Just beyond his door is a really nice-sized patch of grass where I would take Cortana out to use the bathroom. She's usually a pretty mild-mannered dog, sniffing everything on the ground and never really bothering to look up whenever she's exploring and focusing on going to the bathroom. Cortana suddenly started to turn towards the window where the blinds had been closed all the way, and then started barking absolutely hysterically. I was really embarrassed about it. Since when did Cortana act like that? I would pull her and command her to hush, but to no avail. Every day that I went to that patch of grass in the afternoon, she would consistently bark to that window like a maniac. I eventually started taking her somewhere else to see if it would change, and it did. I went back after about a week and found out that the blinds were pulled all the way to the top. The window opened and Joe popped his torso all the way out, stretching his arms to the sky. My first initial thought was just, who does that? I say an awkward hello and then hurry Cortana along and back into our apartment. Someone begins to knock on my door like every other day. I become deadly quiet and tiptoe to the door to see that it's none other than Joe just standing there peering intently into the peephole. I don't open the door. It happens again about 3 more times, and every time the house becomes quiet. A little bit of time goes by and I then receive a text message from Joe offering to take me out to dinner. I'm absolutely perplexed, staring at the message and not really knowing what to say back. Not even 3 minutes go by and he sends another message.
You know, I'm just trying to be friendly after you ditched me last time. Sorry for being friendly.
I should have taken a picture of my face at the time because the shock must have been so great that Cortana sat up just to stare at me. Let me be very clear. I'm kind of a busy woman. I have a lot going on in my life. I don't usually text people back immediately, like ever. I was pretty freaked out by that point and decided to call my mom and tell her what happened. I felt really unsafe in my own home at that point, and I honestly really didn't know what to do. What if this dude decides to try and break into my apartment and attack me, and all because I supposedly ditched him and felt too sick to go to an escape the room event? My mom said to let him know very firmly that my husband wouldn't appreciate me having dinner with another man, and that his behavior was really inappropriate. For some reason, it took me mentioning my husband for Joe to back off. Not me ignoring him or avoiding him or practically running to my car whenever I heard his door open. Even after that, Cortana would still turn to the window and growl. I eventually moved out of that apartment and never heard from Joe ever again after that. And let's keep it that way.